Today, I'm joined by Andy Crocker. Andy is an aerospace executive with 3 decades of experience building high performing teams and leading ambitious projects, including NASA's Human Landing System. He holds degrees in engineering, humanities, management, and leadership, and is an associate fellow of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. His multidisciplinary education and diverse career shaped his unique perspective that led him to write his latest book called The Unconditionals. This book blends hard earned life lessons, science, and real stories to show how 5 timeless values can help anyone rise above setbacks and build a more meaningful, purpose driven life. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his expertise. So, Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, and it's good to have a rocket scientist in our midst. So, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so
Do they call you a rocket scientist,
they
or?
they do. Yeah, I'll use that if I'm trying to pick up women, right?
Oh, right, exactly, exactly. I love it. I love it. Well, let's get into it. I mean, you've got a new book. It's called The Unconditionals.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about the pivotal moment that sparked you to write this book.
Yeah, so I am a rocket scientist, which really just means I'm an aerospace engineer, and I've been that my whole career. So, got a degree in aerospace engineering, and I've worked in the space business my whole career. Um, and the most exciting project that I've ever worked on is the human landing system. You mentioned that in the intro, and that's one of those projects. If you're a if you're a rocket scientist, it's the holy grail. It's the project that you've always wanted to work on. So when that opportunity came along, I went to my management at the time and said, "Look, we've got to go after this." And of course, it was a selfish reason, but at the same time, it was something I knew our company could take a run at, and we did, and found ourselves in competition. It was literally 3 companies left that got large contracts to really begin the competition in earnest. The company I was working for, SpaceX, which is owned by and run by Elon Musk, and Blue Origin, which is run by Jeff Bezos. So it kind of felt like, competing against the 2 richest people in the world at the time. And it was a fantastic project, project of a lifetime. The whole team, to a person, says, they would go back in a minute to work on it. But the first down select that NASA did after a while, they selected SpaceX, and so we're devastated. But then NASA said, well, we really feel like we need to have a backup, so we're gonna continue the competition. And again, it turned out that the company I was working for and Blue Origin were the 2 remaining companies going head to head, and had another opportunity, and again lost. And that was really the last opportunity at the time. So, working on this project, Holy Grail, this is what you want to do. And you can't help but convince yourself this is the project that's going to make your career, right? Um, and when we lost, I had to step back and say, not only what am I going to do next, but I had sort of, unfortunately, kind of wrapped my identity up in this project. And
Mm,
so when I realized it's not going to continue, I had to sort of question, okay, who am I? What am I going to do personally? Not just career wise, but what am I here for? And right about the same time, my oldest child, my son, became a senior in high school. He started his first day senior year, and it sort of hit me. I had decided early on when I started having kids that I want to write things down that I think are important for my kids. And I said, I haven't done anything. Maybe I've collected quotes here and there, but I've not really started that process. I need to get on it. So I started that, not at all thinking about career or values, but just I'm going to start that process. And I got about 2, 3 months into it and realized some of that questioning, what am I about, is getting pulled into this book, because what I want my kids, and now I've decided what I really want to convey to anybody that I can, is what's really important. And it
mm,
really comes down to values.
yeah.
And so that's what the unconditionals is about, is the values, the 5 values that I think are critical to all of us, to individuals, to parents, to people in the workforce and especially to leaders that help us to not just be successful, but be complete, be the right kind of leader that gets things done in the right way and has a positive impact on everybody we come in contact with.
I love it. That's fantastic. I mean, we've seen, time and time after, with failures in leadership, and a lot of it is that they, a lot of leaders struggle with values, and that's part of the problem, right? And I
Right.
think the fact that if your basis is in values and things that are, as you would say, unconditionals, right, in terms of how
Hmm.
you lead, then you have the trust and faith of your team because they know you're going to act in a certain way,
That's
and
right.
so that makes a lot of sense. So
That's right.
the subtitle of the book is the five timeless values. So
Hmm.
share some of those values with us and how they apply directly to leadership.
Yeah, I really do think they're timeless. And I talk in the book about how these same values really have been discussed throughout history, throughout different religions, throughout secular world for thousands of years. And they always come up again. They always bubble to the top. But for me, it starts with love.
Mm.
And when I say love, people kind of think that's a sentimental thing. It doesn't belong in the workplace, but it's not about sentimentality. It's about connecting with people at the human level. It's about humanity. And what love means in terms of how we unconditionally bring that to a leadership position is it's having respect, kindness, and compassion for the people who we lead. And those things have to be unconditional. They have to be, irrespective of the person, the situation, and the context. And so those things, respect, kindness, and compassion, are critical. The next, and love to me is the foundation of all that. Love being the humanity, the connectedness that we have with others. That shows that we care about people, who they are, and independent of what's going on. That's really necessary to begin building that trust with people. And then you can start adding the other values. And I think the next one that's most critical is gratitude, unconditional
Let
gratitude.
me just interrupt you for a second. What's
Yeah.
interesting is that you start with love, and so some of my guests who are listeners who have been listening to the show a long time know that we've had three Navy SEAL commanders on this show,
Uh-huh.
and love came up every time.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is, the toughest warriors that we have on the planet talk
Yeah.
about the idea of the importance of love for
Yeah.
your teammate, love for the guy next to you in the foxhole.
Right.
And that's what held their teams together. And that's why they were successful, is their love for their brothers and their love for each
Exactly.
other. And so I
Exactly.
think that so if Navy SEALs can talk about love, then we in the
Exactly.
business can talk about it as well. So
No, I love it. I love when it comes up in Navy SEALs and professional football teams and all that.
yeah.
It's a fundamental core human value, and so it's critical to be foundational. Gratitude is the second one, and I think that's because people need to feel valued. And gratitude, appreciation for people is creating that sense of value of the person, of even the situation. And it's got in it a contentedness, like, hey, I know things could be different, but this is what I've got. This is who's on my team. This is a situation that we have, and we're appreciating what we have, and we're going to go execute whatever it is with what we have in front of us today. Doesn't mean we're satisfied with, we're never going to try to do better. Of course, we're going to try to do more and have more, but we have what we have today, and we're going to live in the present and be grateful for it. And in particular, be grateful for the people on the team that are working on it and going to try to get the work done. So
It's
gratitude is second.
I'll interrupt you again. I hate to
Yeah,
do it, but
no, that's
it's
fine.
funny because it was just we were talking about NC State, which is where you graduated from. I was
Right.
talking I was at NC State last week doing a presentation on leadership, and I brought up this issue of people and the idea that so you have to have the right people on your team, right?
Hmm.
And so the purpose of leaders is to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus and get them in the right seats. Well, what if you're on a submarine deployed at sea, which is what I was? You have to go to sea with the crew that you're given. So once they shut the hatches, you've got that crew.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to make do with what you have. And I tell the story of how my worst sailor became my best sailor because I got to know him, I got to understand what he took, what made him tick. And so
Right.
the idea of just being, happy with what you've got because this is all you've got and you got to make
Right.
do with it. That made me think about that
Yes,
story of how my worst sailor became my best sailor because I had no other choice. I had to
that's
make do
right.
with what I had. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets to the gratitude for me gets to that sense of only worry about what you can control. The things
Right.
you can't control, worrying about those is just a waste of your energy and time. Think about what you have, be in the present, do the best you can with what you've got.
Yeah.
And then that's going to lead to opportunities to do more and have more. But gratitude is critical. The third value is integrity, and that's one that everybody just kind of says, "Yeah, I get it. Let's move on." But what I think we forget with integrity, especially in the leadership position, is integrity is tied to the word integer, same root value, same root word as the word integer, which is whole number, which is it's a number that is not broken down. It's not broken into pieces, not divisible. It's also connected with a sense of structural integrity or integrity of a software system. All those things are related, and what that should make us realize is to be whole as a leader, we have to have integrity, or integrity is being whole. And what that really looks like is having authenticity and consistency of our person. What we think in private is what we say in public. What we
Hmm.
think is what we say is what we do. Those things have to be consistent. And really integrity is the central characteristic that either builds or breaks trust. And trust is really what holds teams together. So that consistency and transparency and authenticity that goes with integrity are all about being whole as a person and having the team be able to look at the leader and say that, I understand who that is and I can trust that that person is going to do his or her best to be consistent in what he or she does and says. And that's where then teams build on that trust and can go execute the best that they can. That's the third value. Fourth one is accountability. And what's really critical about accountability, I think, for leaders is really the difference between responsibility and accountability. And that is
Okay. You're gonna
responsibility.
get on a subject I love. So go for
Okay.
it. I love where this
Great.
is going. So
Yes. So responsibility for me is you've got a job to do, you've got an assignment, you go do it. Accountability includes that, but usually accountability is not just that you have to do it, you just have to make sure it gets done. And so whether you do it or someone else does it, and often accountability involves bigger tasks or groups of tasks, bigger projects. It's the person who's accountable, it's their responsibility to make sure it all gets done to the best in best way possible. And so accountability is really about ownership. It's about owning what you have to get done and to the best of its ability. Speaking of Navy SEALs, and I know you know this better than I do, but Extreme Ownership is a fantastic book. That to me is one of the best books that captures accountability by a couple of Navy SEALs. I love that book and actually refer to it in my book, but it's about and ownership is means that when things go wrong, you as the leader take the blame for it. You accept that the buck stops with you. When things go right, you share that across the team because you definitely weren't the only one who had something to do with the success. But whether it's a success or a failure, you make sure to do a debrief, right? You make sure you do uh, a readout of what went right, what went wrong, and let's share that knowledge across the team so that we can all be better in the end.
yeah, I love that. I know one of the lessons I learned from the Navy that stood with me my whole career is the idea that you can delegate authority, but you can never delegate responsibility. So
Right.
in other words, we can empower our teams to get things done, right? But if something gets screwed up and it's on our watch, it's our fault. Like we're accountable to that. You never can give up accountability. And what I saw in corporate America sometimes is that we would delegate responsibility and then we would hold on to authority, right? So some of the worst managers that I saw do it is they would blame people when things went wrong, right? And then but they wouldn't give them all of the tools and the authority to get the job done. So
Right.
but they would throw them under the bus if things went wrong. And so
Exactly.
the great leaders don't throw people under the bus. They take full responsibility. They look to the mirror when things go wrong.
That's
And I
right.
think that's so I love that this ends up on the list because I think it's very it's vital.
Yeah.
My first book is called I Have the Watch, and when you had the
Yes.
watch an officer on a submarine, you had full responsibility for that boat. You know why you stood that watch, and so
Yes.
yeah, and that's all. It's that book is all about that idea of
Yes,
taking
that's exactly right.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The Navy does, and armed forces in general do a great job
yeah,
of teaching accountability. And I, like I said, the book Extreme Ownership is great. And I look forward to reading your book about that because I know that is a big part of what you went through.
yeah.
The last value for me is one that um, isn't necessary to be a person, but it is necessary if you're going to live in the world and actually do things. And I call it endeavor. And an endeavor really is doing. It's acting or striving to get things done. And the real point of it is growth.
Mm,
So we go do things, we go endeavor in order to grow, and in order to grow as a person, but as a leader, obviously you want to grow as a team and you want to help the individuals on the team grow. And that really, I think, encapsulates what a team leader is supposed to do, is to work to help the individuals on the team be the best they can be,
mm.
and for the team to be the best it can be. And if those things happen, then more often than not, you will do well. And as a leader, you'll grow as well. But growth is really about what comes out of endeavor.
Yeah, that I love these. They're such important, just fundamental things that we need to understand as leaders. So, as I'm listening to you, there might be listeners that are saying, "Well, these are kind of soft skills. These are like,
Right.
these aren't the hard things that the business, we don't learn this in MBA school, right? We
Right.
learn, cash flow, we learn P&L statements, we learn investment strategies, but we don't learn these things. So if you have leaders that live these values, um, what what can they expect to see in their teams? How does it get results in the organization?
Yeah. I come from just like you, come from a pretty black and white world. The defense world, the aerospace world tend to be pretty technical and pretty black and white very often. And so it can be difficult to relate what feels sometimes like soft values. But really, I come from an engineering background. That's my heart and soul. And so the way I lay out the values in the book is like an operating system. It's a framework. These values sort of make up who we are or should make up who we are. And if we can use them unconditionally, despite whatever's happening, despite who we're dealing with, what the situation is, to me it's much more of a system, a systemic or systematic way of approaching, how we deal with the circumstances. But the other piece of it that is important is yes, you get results. It's not where you can say I'm going to have 3 units of respect and 4 units of honesty, and I get 5 units of some outcome. But values drive behavior, and behavior is what drives performance or drives results. And what we really get out of, when a team acts with integrity, or I'm sorry, when a team acts with accountability, the performance of the team is good because people own their responsibilities. They go do what they are responsible for doing. They hold each other accountable, and the performance of the team is good. If a leader has integrity and builds the trust of the team, the team can not spend time worrying about what the leader is going to do next or who thinks what about whom, but just goes and executes and ends up being more productive. So these values lead to the results that you want, even if they can't directly be measured. And what I think again and again you see in the working world is when these values, however they're framed, when these values get implemented in teams, the teams perform at their best.
Yeah, I think about, I often, talk to people about, describe the best leader you've ever worked for or the worst leader you've ever worked for. And when you talk to them about the best leader they ever worked for, you hear these things that you're
Hmm.
talking about, right? You don't hear you don't necessarily hear like, oh, we achieved our EBIT targets every
Right.
month, right? No, what you hear is they looked after me, they had my back,
Hmm.
they treated everyone fairly.
Hmm.
They were interested in me, in my
Hmm.
career. They cared for me, right? And this stuff can't be faked. Like love and gratitude and integrity can't be faked,
Right.
right?
That's right.
And I think when you hear about the bosses, their worst bosses stories is that there's a lot of faking going on, like a lot of pretending that they cared, a lot of
Hmm.
pretending. One of the classic stories is like never making promises they knew they would never fulfill. Like, oh, if you
Right.
just do this project for me, I'll get you a raise, and that never happened, right?
Right.
There was no integrity at all, and so to me, it's like if you want to be a boss worth remembering, or a leader worth following, these are the kind of skills, or not, I don't know if they're skills, but values you have
Yeah.
to have, right, if you
That's
want to
right.
make a difference in the organization, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so often we can get caught up in what is necessary to succeed in the short term. And really, these values are what we need to succeed in the long term. And the good news is that very often it leads to short-term success as well once we get those implemented. But if we are only thinking about the short term, then we can often forget that these values are critical, and then make mistakes that lead to sometimes being thought of as a bad leader or having a mistake, a failure of good leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we, if we're working down this list and we're doing our best to do this and we make a mistake. So for example, integrity, right?
Mhm.
If you mentioned it builds trust. So what if you screw up and you break your trust? Is there, how can a leader rebuild that after that's happened?
Yeah. Well, number one, you have to step up and be accountable, right? You have to admit the mistake. You have to say, I own it. I made the mistake. This is my fault. This is what I did wrong. You have to be transparent about that. I acknowledge that I screwed up. Here's how I screwed up. Um, and then here's what I'm going to do from here forward to fix it. And that is likely going to include trying to unconditionally have integrity going forward. So it's being honest, but it's also being authentic. And if you make a mistake, it's going to take a while to overcome that, or at least to offset it. And that means it's going to require a long time of just repeatedly showing that you're trustworthy, that you do what you said you were going to do. But it starts with communication and transparency, and then repeated effort towards showing integrity, building that trust back up, and hopefully, overcoming those mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I mean, it's the humility of saying I screwed up,
Yeah,
and even apologizing, right? I mean, I
yeah,
think it's a hard thing for leaders sometimes to do, but I think
it is.
it shows your humanity. It's like, guess what? There's no such thing as a perfect leader, and there's no such thing as a perfect employee. So
That's right.
I'm going to
That's right.
screw up from time to time, and if I look throughout my career, I've made a lot of really dumb mistakes, right? And
Right.
but I think that the ability to say, I screwed up. I'm sorry. That's not, I didn't intend to, but I did.
Right.
And this is what I'm going to do to fix it. But like you said, it's consistency over time where you build that trust back
Right.
as you build that back. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
fact is, people know, almost always people know we made mistakes. So
Yeah.
so if we don't admit it, they still know it. And we're often scared to admit mistakes because we think it makes us look small. But the fact is, if we admit mistakes, it actually makes us look stronger.
Yeah.
Hey, we can still stand up after having made a mistake. We can stand up and say, "I'm going to go do better," and then go prove it. That really makes you look a whole lot stronger than not taking the blame, trying to hide from it, and then trying to figure out how to make up for it. Because people have a hard time believing you if you don't fess up to the mistake.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Everybody knows what's going on. You can't hide from it. Everybody knows when there's been a mistake.
Right,
Everyone knows when you're faking it. To pretend that it doesn't exist is it makes you look worse. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So when you have a healthy team culture, right, and things are running well, what does accountability look like on a team like that?
I think it is shared responsibility. I think it is accountability. I think I mentioned this, but if I didn't, it really has to start with shared expectations. What are the expectations? What are the assignments? What are the roles and responsibilities? If you don't know what those are, then accountability gets really hard. So it starts there. But then when people understand, hey, here are my roles and my responsibilities, then they go do it and they share and make sure that we're holding each other accountable. We're making sure that I do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm gonna do what I can to encourage others because we're all in this together, and the success of the team depends on the whole team. I'm sure in submarines that's as true as it is in any place. That every role is really critical, and so accountability really has to be shared, has to be a team effort. And when we know and we acknowledge and we own our roles and responsibilities, then what comes out typically is going to be the best the team can produce.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I often talk about shared a shared responsibility, but I also talk about shared vulnerability. So we
Mhm.
on a submarine, we depended on each other for our very lives. So we had to have each other's back. So we not only were we, we shared the responsibility for operating the ship effectively, we also like knew that if we screwed up, we all die. Right. That's the situation we were in. So there was a high level of accountability within the team
Mhm.
to make sure that every sailor and every officer was qualified to do what they, to do their job. And so
Right.
there was a high level of positive peer pressure to get qualified, to know your job and know exactly what to do in every situation. So,
Mhm.
and that being around people like that, being part of a high performing team like that, where there's this high level of shared responsibility and accountability, man, that's some of the best. It's, yeah, I've not really experienced something at that level since I've been out of the military.
Yeah.
Just something like a Swiss watch operating well. We
Right.
knew, we would, so when things were calm, we would work collaboratively uh, collaboratively together to get things done. But when things hit the fan, everybody knew their roles, responsibility, and they just dropped into the right roles. And it's just a pretty cool place to work in some place like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Well, this is you've given us a lot of things to think about. It's been fantastic. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
I think I actually listened to a couple of your podcasts just to kind of get a sense for what you talk about, and your most recent one with Dr. Alfredo. I won't try to pronounce his last name, but
good,
you know,
good luck.
he talks about AI. It talks about leadership in the era of AI. And what really I think bubbles to the top, he talked about it, but I think is so important today. It's always important, but maybe more than ever is humanity, is the connection that we have with other people. And I think that's what I would want people to think of first is, um, I call it unconditional love, but you can call it respect, you can call it connection, you can call it humanity. All of those things are equally important, but it's all about caring about people as humans, respect, kindness, and compassion as humans. I think that's really what leaders need to bring to the table today.
Absolutely. What a great message, Andy. I absolutely love that. I like to say that leadership is a people business, and you just said the same thing, and I love it. I truly believe in it. And you hit the nail on the head with that. I think it's about humanity. It's about people. It's about I mean, leadership is all about motivating a group of people to get something done, right?
Hmm.
So without people, nothing gets done. So
That's right.
you have to start with the humanity, start with the
Yeah.
people,
They,
and I
they
think
need to
that's
feel valued, and they need to feel like they're cared about, right? And that's when you're going to get the most out of the team.
That's exactly right. We do it in our relationships outside of work. Why don't we do that inside our relationships at work?
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. And what I love about your story and the lessons you're teaching is you come from a technical background. You come
Right.
from an engineering, aerospace, doing difficult things from a science standpoint. And yet you're coming back to humanity
Oh
as these
yeah.
key issues.
Yeah. It's got to be central to what we do, no matter what business we're in.
I love that. I love that. It's amazing how many engineers are in the leadership space. I don't know
Hmm.
what it is. I don't know if our brains work that way or what have you, but it's funny to see so many technical people end up in this space talking about the importance of these softer skills that we don't
Hmm.
often talk about in business. So,
Right.
Andy, this has been fantastic. So, how can our listeners find out more about you and this new book?
Well, you can go to andycrockerbooks.com. You can find out more about me, about the book. You can actually find a link there. You click on it, and it'll take you to any platform. I've actually got it on audiobook and ebook, and as well as hard copies, so you can get it any of those places from that website. You can also find me on LinkedIn, just Andy Crocker, and be happy to talk to you if you're interested in chatting more.
That sounds good. We're gonna put links in the show notes for all of Andy's resources. And again, the book is called The Unconditionals, and there are 5 unconditional values that you have to live if you want to be a great leader, if you want to be a leader worth following, a leader to be remembered. Follow these 5 things, and you're going to be really effective. How do I know? Well, I've been doing this for 30 years, right? And Andy's been doing it for a long time. So you're talking to people, you're listening to people that have been doing it for a long time. These are timeless values that are going to make you a better leader. So get the book, The Unconditionals, follow the links in the show notes. If you have a question for Andy, reach out to him. He'd be happy to answer any questions. But go ahead and follow the link, get the book, and read it and become a better leader. Andy, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all of the work that you're doing, all these ideas that you've come up with. And I know your children are going to read this. They're going to love it. And I think they're great stories. They're great timeless lessons. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it, and I loved being on the show.
Thank you. I enjoyed having you as well. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.